Tantra Illuminated with Dr. Christopher Wallace is a journey through the depths of the human experience, as viewed through the lens of the tradition called non-dual Shaiva Tantra. This multi-format podcast delves into the fascinating world of classical Tantra and its intersections with philosophy, neuroscience, psychology, human development, and the broader world of spirituality. This week's episode is a scriptural reading, the second part of Chapter 4 of Abhinavagupta's Tantrasāra, the essence of Tantra. This section of the text is quite esoteric. That is to say, it alludes to some secret teachings. So I'll take a moment to explain what's meant by secret teachings. Of course, they're not entirely secret, or no one would know about them. These teachings are amongst the most important and closely guarded teachings of the non-dual Shaiva Tantra tradition. And as Abhinavagupta explains in this section of the text, he was taught by his gurus that such teachings should be shared, but never all in one place, so that people who are merely reading and who do not have a living teacher cannot fully understand these esoteric teachings. So it's on purpose that you won't be able to fully understand what's being shared in this section of the text. But I'll explain a little bit about it now. Abhinavagupta first lists the various names for the absolute, or the ultimate principle of reality, which is simultaneously transcendent and immanent as all things. And these terms that he lists towards the beginning of this section are all found in various different scriptural texts of the tradition. And then he goes on to say that all these various aspects of the ultimate principle of reality can be subsumed under the rubric of the three goddesses of the Trika. And these goddesses are interesting because, unlike other deities of the tradition, they do not have proper names. They merely have titles. Para, para, and apara literally just means supreme, intermediate, and lower. And these are the titles of the three Trika goddesses. So they are principles in a way, just as much as they are personified as deities. And then Abhinavagupta teaches that the three Trika goddesses are subsumed by a fourth transcendent principle that instantiates as the three, and yet is something more than the three. So this fourth encompassing principle is also personified as a goddess who he names. And these four, then, are to be multiplied by the three functions of creation, stasis, and dissolution. So each of the four goddesses performs each of the three functions. And of course, if you multiply 4 times 3, you get 12. And so that corresponds to the 12 Kalis. That is to say, the 12 Kalis taught in the Krama branch of the tradition are expressions of one of the 4 Trika goddesses in one of these modes of creation, stasis, and dissolution. So scholars such as Sanderson and Deshkovsky have written on this extensively. You can learn more about it if you like. But here, please listen to the text of the Tantrasāra as a transmission, because lacking explanation, it cannot be understood, at least not thoroughly, by the intellectual mind. And such explanations do exist and can be helpful for the student of the tradition. But here, see if you can get a mystical transmission of the pattern of reality that Abhinavagupta is describing. It's as if each of the deities is an energetic node of the overarching consciousness that they express. And when those waves of energy interact with each other, they create a complex interference pattern, as it's called by physicists. That is to say, similar to the complex pattern of waves that you get if you toss several stones into a pond at the same time. And that is the 12 Kalis. So there's even more taught in this section of the text than that, and yet it's a fairly short section, lacking, as I said, any explanation. So receive this beautiful transmission from Abhinavagupta on a deeper than intellectual level, if possible, but also note the various gems of teaching that he gives in this part of the text, including, of course, the final verse, which is one of the most exquisite pieces of spiritual poetry Abhinavagupta ever produced. And if you want an unpacking of this teaching, on my web portal, tantrailluminated.org, if you become a subscriber, you can find a recorded retreat on this text, the Tantrasāra, in which most of these teachings are unpacked in some detail. The Tantrasāra of Abhinavagupta, Chapter 4, Part 2. The arising of the cycle of consciousness. In this view, the highest divinity has as its essence all-inclusive expanded awareness. And its power is this very inclusive wholeness, denoted by utterances in the scriptures such as the totality, the potency, the wave, the heart, the essence, the pulsation, the pervasive power, the goddess of the three, the black one, she who devours time, the fierce one, the word, experience, perception, and the constant one. Each of these names denotes an activity of divine consciousness related to its meaning, such that it may be meditated upon in one or another of these aspects, and so become seated in the heart of each meditator. This all-inclusive expanded awareness manifests through clearly seeing the fact that all powers belong to it and cohere in it. And its powers are innumerable. Enough to say, its powers constitute the whole of reality. How could all these powers be taught? like this. The whole of reality is encompassed by three primary powers. She by whose power the highest divinity manifests, perceives, and supports all this, from Shiva to earth, as pure, undifferentiated awareness, is its sacred, transcendent power, Parashakti. She by whose power it manifests, perceives, and supports all this as diversity within unity, like elephants and other creatures appearing in a single mirror, is its sacred intermediate power, Parashakti. She by whose power it manifests, perceives, and supports all this as pure differentiation, characterized by apparent mutual separation of subjects and objects, is his sacred lower power, Aparashakti. She by whose power he devours this threefold process, holding it within himself alone as unified awareness, is simply the blessed goddess Shri Para, denoted in this ultimate aspect by other names, such as the revered Matrasadbhava, Mother Existence, who is the essence of all knowers, and Kala Karshani, she who devours time, and Vameshwari, she who emanates. These four powers, 3 plus 1, operate freely in three modes each: emission, stasis, and resorption. Thus, there are 12 in total. 4 powers times 3 modes. To explain. 1. First, consciousness projects an entity or state entirely internally. 2. Then, perceiving it as something distinct from itself, it, that is to say, consciousness, becomes passionate towards that very entity. 3. Then, wishing to reabsorb it within, it begins to internalize that very entity. 4. And then it alternately creates and devours a doubt or hesitation that constitutes an obstacle to the absorption of that entity or state. 5. The element of hesitation devoured, it withdraws that entity or state into itself by reabsorbing it. 6. Then it contemplates its intrinsic nature. This capacity to reabsorb the entity or experience is my very nature. 7. Then, while pondering its intrinsic nature as the capacity to reabsorb, it perceives something remaining as a subliminal impression, but then perceives something else. Another subliminal impression reduced to pure consciousness. Eight. Then it reabsorbs the wheel of the 12 faculties, making them one with its realization of its nature. 9. Then it also absorbs the lord of the sense faculties, the ahankara. 10. Then it also withdraws the constructed, dualistic, limited subject, individuality itself. 11. It withdraws the universal subject too, which is on the threshold of abandoning all trace of contraction and excited to reach full expansion. 12. It withdraws even that fully expanded aspect into the absolute formless ground. These 12 blessed goddesses that are consciousness, revealing themselves to multiple knowers, or even to one, in configurations of twos or threes or other combinations, all at once or gradually, revolving like a wheel, manifesting themselves externally also as the cycles of the 12 months, the 12 phases of the sun, the 12 signs of the zodiac, and other sets of 12, all the way down to the series of 12 pots, 12 painted cloths, and other items used in ritual. They nourish the autonomy of the Lord of the Circle, Mantana Bhairava, and are to be known by variations on the name Sri Kali, since they go, reject, know, reckon, enjoy, resonate, and merge things and beings into themselves, as per the meanings of the verbal root kal. As my esteemed Krama Guru, the revered Bhuti Raja, said, because she projects and because she knows, and because she is the projected and the known, she is called Kali. This teaching may be examined in more detail here and there in various works I have written, such as my commentary on the Krama Stotra, called the Kramakeli, and the Prakarana Stotra, and so on. For my revered Guru said that something highly secret and esoteric should not be related in a single place, nor should it be kept entirely hidden. Thus, all that has been said above concerning worship, fire offerings, mantra repetition, disciplined observance, and yoga must be understood in terms of the great Lord, in the non-dual sense of that term taught here. And please see Chapter 4, Part 1 for the passage Abhinava is referring to. For all others look upon that which is to be let go of, from Vishnu to Shiva, as if it were the level of reality to be cultivated and attained. that is, as if it were Paramashiva. And that false view must necessarily be relinquished by those who seek the highest truth in their practice, the Anuttara yogis. Vidyadhipati's great passion in his hymn to experience was in relation to this very point. Equipoise in relation to injunctions and prohibitions. Of these 5 practices that have been taught above, yaga, homa, japa, vrata, and yoga, see Chapter 4, Part 1, one should practice whichever of them makes natural sense. One should practice in exactly whichever mode presents itself as compelling and effective. But one should not weary oneself with distinctions of what should and should not be eaten, what is pure and impure, and so on. For such distinctions are in reality only mental constructs. They are not qualities that inhere in those things themselves. Such is taught in the sacred scripture of the East, the Malini Vijayottara Tantra, and other sources. For purity is not intrinsic to a thing the way blueness is, because the very same thing may be declared as impure in another context. If it be argued that it really is impure for him in that context because of the applicable Vedic injunction, then the same applies in the case of other non-Vedic injunctions. If it be argued that the non-Vedic injunction is false and unreal because it is overridden by the Veda, we will say, no, the capacity to supersede belongs to Shiva's injunctions alone, as established by reason and countless scriptures such as the Sarvajñanottara. Therefore, it is established that whatever restriction, whatever injunction or prohibition that is taught in the Vedic texts, or even in the treatises of the Shaiva Siddhanta, the Bhairava Tantras, the Kula system, and so on, is entirely powerless on this level of practice. This is exactly what is taught in the sacred scripture of the East and other sources. It may be investigated in more detail in my Tantra Loka. Summary verses for Chapter 4. A bound soul who has any of these convictions: I am dense, I am inert matter, or I am completely bound by my karma, or I am impure, or I am a pawn of others, may seek to attain the steady conviction of the opposite of these views. If she or he succeeds in this, she or he immediately becomes the Lord, whose body is the whole universe, and whose soul is awareness. In whatever manner such a conviction may be attained, a superior yogi should cultivate it at all times. He should not allow his perspective to become divorced from the real nature of things, and thus be led into doubt by the mass of foolish teachings in this world. Vernacular summary verses. I am a filthy sinner. I am a bound creature. I am separate from all other beings. Or I transcend all things. When such firm beliefs are stains on the heart, how indeed for such a one can the experience of supreme reality manifest? Whenever and whatever causes the vibration of resolute effort towards the goal to arise for him should be taken as just such an empowerment for him at that very moment. In the heart lotus of awareness that has blossomed due to an intense descent of a ray of light from the sun of supreme Shiva, the power of awakening pours forth the exquisite fragrance of the self, revealing its secret nature. There the bee of self-awareness buzzes, cherishing its own radiant beauty, humming, I am Lord Shiva, overflowing with the reality of all beings and all things. Thus ends the 4th day's teaching in the essence of the Tantras, composed by the revered master Abhinavagupta and entitled Illumination of the Empowered Method. Om. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Remember, you can always find out more about the tradition of non-dual Shaiva Tantra at tantrailluminated.org, where, if you wish, you can become a subscriber to our online learning portal, and you'll receive access to a vast number of recordings, including a comprehensive curriculum in tantric philosophy, tantric yoga, guided meditation, and much, much more. Music for the podcast composed and recorded by Ann Leader. Find her at annleader.com. Podcast produced by Grazia Tribulato. New episodes drop every week, and may all beings benefit.